All right, hello. I want to make this video to explain the bond concept and also to explain how do you use the formula provided in the textbook to solve for the bond problems. So let's get started. So the first question is, what is a bond? Okay, so what is a bond? So if you think about bond as an investment, it's pretty much the same as if you buy stock or if you borrow the money of you to some company. So the company can reinvest the money borrowed from you, and then to attract you to do that, they will give you some interest. Okay, so you would love to borrow them more money again. So that's something you can think of about bond. And the concept of the bond is actually we can explain that on the cash flow diagram. Okay, so bond, you can think it as a certificate. Okay, that's a piece of certificate. And this certificate will include some conditions. Actually, that certificate is the evidence the company gave to you to show you really lend them some amount of money, and the company would promise that first they will pay back the money you lend to them. Pay back the money you lent them at the beginning will be called as principal, right? They will pay back the principal after how many years? That's the first condition you would have on your bond or that piece of paper, okay? And the second is they will tell you what is the coupon rate. Coupon rate is also called bond rate, okay? That will define the interest you can get every year or every period. So if the company said, okay, we will pay you interest at 10% or any percent, okay, they will pay you that many percent of your principal. Okay, and they will pay you this interest at the end of every period. If they say that period is a year, so they will pay you this interest every year or at the end of every year until they pay back your principal. Okay, that's the second condition. And the third is they need to tell you how much they want to borrow from you. Okay, and that much is called face price. So face price is how much the company borrowed from you. Okay, it also is something we said principal. That's the money originally you invest in that company. So you see that the face price is actually how much you borrow or how much you lend to that company. Okay, and so on that piece of paper, which is called a bond coupon, 3 conditions will be listed there. Okay, and those 3 conditions is: 1, what is the retirement, when the coupon is retired, which means when the company will pay back all your principal. Okay, it could be 10 years, 30 years, or even longer. And the second, what is the bond rate, which is the interest you can get every period. if they say bond rate is 10%, which means 10% of your principal will be paid every year or every period as your interest. So you would love to do this business with them, right? You lend them some money and they will pay you back interest as you are earning extra earnings, and then also you will have your principal all back at the end, right? That sounds like a good business. So the bond rate is something they attract you. And the third thing is the face price, which is how much exactly they want to borrow from you, or how much you pay to buy that bond, buy this piece of certificate. So that's the three things about the bond. And right now you already understand how the bond works, right? So if we draw it on a cash flow diagram, let's say if we say the retirement, so pay the company said, okay, pay back your principal after 10 years. Okay, that's our example. And the coupon rate or the bond rate is 10%. That's your interest rate. And the face price, how much they want to borrow from you, let's say it's 10,000. Okay, so if we have this case, what is the diagram? So the diagram is, if we look at this cash flow from your point of view, because every diagram you should set up a point of view or perspective, right? So if we look at this from your point of view at the beginning, right? You want to lend the company $10,000. So that's the money going out from your pocket. So it's gonna be an arrow going downward. So, and the amount is gonna be 10,000, right? And then they said the retirement time for the coupon for the bond is 10 years. So they will pay you back this principal at the end of the 10th year. So on this timeline, we will have year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, and year 10. Okay, let's get rid of this extra length. All right, so at the end of year 10, you will get back all your principal, okay? Because that will be your income. So it's the arrow going up, right? And the same amount. That's what they promise you on this bond. And but that's not the only thing you get. To attract you to do this business with them, they will give you interest every year, okay? So, and how much they give you every year, the interest is calculated as, the interest will be, they said, okay, the bond rate is 10%, which means the interest rate is 10%. So every year they will give you 10% of what? Of your principal, right? So that your interest per year will be 1,000. Sounds like a good business, right? That's why you want to invest your money in this bond. So, and that's gonna be your income every year. So it's gonna be arrows going up, and it's happening every year. Looks like an annuity, right? Annuity is the income or some cash flows occurs every period, okay? And you can see that A is 1,000, which means it happens every year. Okay, so this is the cash flow of a typical bond. And in our case, the bond is on the bond certificate paper, it said we will pay back your principal at the end of the 10th year. And that 10 years will be the bond's retirement time. Okay, and second, the bond will say the bond rate is 10%, which means in the end of every period, in this case is year, so in the end of every year they will give you 10% of your principal as your interest to attract you. Okay, and the third, the face price, which means how much they want to borrow from you, in our case is 10,000. So that's the cash flow of this bond, and every bond will have the similar cash flow. The only difference could be the number of years or number of periods. It could be the bond period could be not necessary to be year. It could be a quarter or half year, and but the typical cash flow is gonna be similar. Okay, and but in this investment there is something else you want to know. So it's so there is another interest rate, I%, that is your yield rate. Okay, so the bond rate is something is given by the company. Okay, but the yield rate is determined by yourself. You can think the yield rate as your personal MARR. You remember MARR? The minimum attractive in rate of return, right? So MAR is your personal number. Well, it depends on like your situation, your salary, your investments, and your debts, and you can decide like what MAR is your minimum attractive rate of return. And if an investment is giving you a higher interest rate than your MARR, you would think that business is a good deal. You want to do that, and anything below that, you will think that's not a good deal. And most people will set their MAR as their personal saving account interest rate. So they will think, okay, if I do nothing, I just save my money in the bank account, at least I can get several percent as my interest, as my interest, right? So they would say, okay, any business that can give me interest rate higher than that bank account interest rate will be a good business. I can get the money out from that bank account and then invest in that business. So many people will think the bank account interest rate will be their MARR. Okay, so but MARR or the I% here is called yield rate in the bond problem. So the yield rate is what you decide for you. Okay, but the bond rate is given, and so the next thing is we want to define some terms or variables in the bond problem. So the first thing is the Z, capital Z. We call it face value, right? Or face price. The face value is exactly how much the company want to borrow from you or how much you pay to buy that bond. Okay, it's just different way to say that, but actually you just give your money to some company, let them reinvest, and they will pay you back, and also they will give you interest. That's the same thing, but you can the how much you pay for that bond or how much you lend to them is called face value. Okay, and the second thing is C. C is we call it redemption. And redemption is the total payback when the bond is retired. So the company said, we will pay back your face value when the bond is retired. Then that means your C equals to Z. Okay, and usually that's the case. So usually C equals to Z. Okay, and the R is what we called bond rate. Bond rate is the interest you can get every period, right? So bond rate is R, and that is given by the company. And the N company. Then it's the N. N is number of periods before redemption. Okay, it's a number of period before redemption. Okay, and we call it a period here. You see that? It's not just a number of years. It could be number of quarters or number of months or number of half years. It really depends on how the bond is defined. Okay, so we have to say it's number of periods. And I is the yield rate. That is your personal MARR. That is how much you want to have at least for your personal investment. Okay, so that is decided by you. And typical question you want to answer is how much the bond is worth. VN, the value of the bond. Okay, so when you have a lot of bond options to buy, you want to ask yourself, for a desired yield rate, how much should you be willing to pay for the bond? Okay, so that's the question to answer, and that's why we want to use the formula VN is C, that's your redemption value, times the factor P/F, yield rate I%, number of periods, plus R, the bond rate, times the face value. That's it. That is your interest, right? Times P/A with your yield rate I%, number of periods. So that is why we want to use this formula to tell you what value you want to pay or how much you want to pay if you have your desired yield rate as I% for that bond. And if you have the value calculated out and it's greater than the bond price, then you would say that's a good business, right? Because you're paying less and you're getting more. So, but after all you want to know is how much you would love to pay, and that is your VN. Okay, so now let's go check the problem we have. So our example in the class is to find the VN of a bond, okay? And that bond is a 10-year bond. And the bond will pay you 6% per year nominal rate. But how they pay you? They will pay you semi-annually. Okay, and this is something you need to be careful about. So although the bond rate is 6% per year, but they will pay you every half year, semi-annually, okay? And it said the redemption will be the same as the face value. Okay, so redemption is the same as the face value. So after 10 years, they will pay back your face value as a lump sum. And you decide that your yield rate is 10% per year. Okay, and also the face value is 1,000. So the case is you pay 1,000 to buy that bond. You pay 1,000, so your face value is 1,000, right? And then that bond will pay back that 1,000 as a redemption after 10 years. And during these 10 years, every half year, you will have interest, right? And also, you know, whatever business is giving you interest rate greater than 10% is gonna be a good business. So your yield rate is 10% per year. That's all the given condition. Okay. So now before you use that formula, you want to answer these questions. What is N? Number of periods. Okay. So your period in this case is period is half year, right? Because it said the payment is gonna be semi-annually, right? So your period is half year. And during the 10 years, how many half years you would have? So 10 years, every year you have 2 half years, right? So it's 10 times 2, which means you're gonna have 20 half years during the 10 years. That is your number of periods. It is not 10. Okay? That's something you need to understand. And the second question is, what is your R%? R%, we said it's a bond rate, okay? But it's a bond rate per period, per interest period. So it's gonna be how many percent per half year? To answer that question, you need to know, okay, it's given 6% is bond rate, but it's for 1 year, right? So how much is for half year? It's gonna be 6% divided by 2. Because 6% is for 1 year, then half year is gonna be 3%, okay? So your R would be 3%. And I%, so it's given your yield rate is 10% per year. So how many percent per half year? To answer that, you're gonna use 10% divided by 2, which is 5%. Okay, so these are the tricky parts. Because what is given is on a year basis, but what you want is on a period basis. In this case, your period is half year, so you have to convert everything to per half year. Okay, now the C is, it said the redemption is going to be same as the face value, so the C is equal to the Z, which is 1000. So these are all the variables you want to figure out first, and then you can use the formula. Okay, so the formula said Vn is C times a factor, which is to find P given F at interest rate I% number of periods, plus R times Z times to find present value given A at interest rate I% and number of periods. Okay, so in this case, you already know C is 1000, right? So it's 1000 times the factor P/F I% is 5% and is 20, and R is 3% times Z is 1000 times the factor, which is P/A 5%, 20. Okay, and the next question is, how do you find the factor, right? These two factors. So the way you do that is to find factor P/F 5% and 20, right? So if you want to do that, you have to check your appendix C on your textbook. Okay, and you, for each table, you want to find the table of 5%. Okay, and then check column of P/F. So on that table, you will have different columns, and you want to check the header of the column to see which one is the column of P/F to find the present value given the future value. And once you have that column, you can label it as this, which means that's the column you want to look at. And then you want to check the row, which row you're looking at, okay? And then you check the row of 20. Okay, so on the left side of this table, the first column is the number of periods. So you can see period 1, period 2, 3, 4, 5 until 20. You see 20. Okay, that's gonna be the row you want to look at. So you got a column, you got a row number, and then you can locate your factor. Okay. So let's go to the textbook and see if we can find that, okay? So textbook is gonna be here. This is the 16th edition. And then we want to find the very end of your textbook, okay? And then you go back, and then you see all these tables, okay? And this is Appendix C, okay? And then you just turn to the next page. So for the next page, you can see this is, okay? this is a table of I equals to 1/4%. That's not what you want. So you continue to find. This is the 0.5%. That's not what you want. This is 0.75%. Not the one. Remember, what you want is 5%, right? So 1%, not yet. 2%, not this. 3%, not this. 4%, okay. 5%. That's the table you want to look at. Okay, and then let's turn this. Let me see how can we turn this to. Alright, I don't see a rotation. Okay, let's just take a look at that in this weird angle. Alright, so remember, first you want to find this table of 5%, and then you want to find the column, right? And we said you want to find the P/F. So you check column F/P, no. P/F, yes. So that's the column you want to look at. And then you want to find the row. The row is number of periods, right? So this is the column you want to look at for the row number. So row 1 means it's number of periods 1, but we have 20 periods. So you want to look at this, 20, okay? So you find this 20 as your row, and you find this column, right? So here, that is your factor, 0.3769. Okay, so you want to go back, and then you can write it down here. So it's 1000 times 0. What's that? 37.9069. So 37.69. And then move on to the next factor. So it's a P/A on the same table. I equals to 5%. So P/A, you go back. So P/A is this column, right? Wait a second. Okay, the pen doesn't work here, but the P/A is, okay, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go back to see if I can get the pen activated again. All right, seems working here. So that's the table, and you want to find the P/A column, right? And you want to use the number of periods as 20, the same. So you look for that factor, and in this column, so here is your factor, 12, 46, 22. So you go back, 12, 46, 22. So now you have everything ready, and then you just want to use a calculator to calculate what is the VN. Okay, so I hope this video is helpful, and let me know if you have further questions. All right, thank you.